On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with a survivor named Dallas. And Dallas was in a toxic relationship with a stonewalling narcissist. It's a story of future faking, subtle abuse, trying to prove yourself, and dangling carrots. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of toxic relationships. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It is that simple. And now, before we get to our episode with Dallas, where things really start to unfold in a big way toward the end of her story, I just first want to thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, a reminder, if you have not left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., please leave us a 5-star review, as it helps out the show a lot when it comes to rankings. Now, if you have not been to our website recently at narcissistapocalypse.com, please do go there if you want to be part of our show. At the top of the page, you'll say, be a guest on our show. There's a button there at the top. Press it at narcissistapocalypse.com, fill out the guest form, and we will go from there. But another way to be on our show is to be part of our Letters to My Narcissist compilation episode. Also, you can get there by going to narcissistapocalypse.com. There's a floating button on the side of the page. It says send voicemail. Click on that button. It records up to 5 minutes. Leave your letter on there. If you need more than 5 minutes, click that button a second time. Click it a third time. Click it a fourth time. You'll eventually get there with all the time that you need. We are accumulating these letters for a volume 5 of that episode. And if you don't want to read your letter yourself, you want us to read it, myself or my old pal Melissa, send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com and put Letters to My Narcissist in the subject line. What else is going on at narcissistapocalypse.com? Well, I'm glad you asked, everyone. If you go to narcissistapocalypse.com/courses, we are now offering high conflict parenting courses because we have partnered with an online parenting company called Online Parenting. And many of the courses we're offering were created by Bill Eddy. And if you've listened to our episode last year with a divorce lawyer named Helen, you'll know that Bill Eddy is an expert in dealing with these individuals in court. And now he's helped create many parenting courses to help you through divorce and to help support your children too. These courses are the most widely recognized courses by family courts across the country. So if you want to support the show and are looking for guidance, please do go to narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. Another way to support the show is by becoming a patron of our Patreon. Yes, we started a Patreon. You guys know this already, but for the new people, you don't. So anyway, you can go to patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. We have episodes with former guests, episodes that never made it to air, and much, much more. Sometimes there's a little bit of rambling between myself and my old pal Melissa. Hey, Melissa, how are you? You were coming back from the cottage? I hope you had a great time. Anyway, what else do we have going on here? I think it's almost time for us to start the show. And that's a good thing because I am a bit under the weather. I'm going to be getting a COVID test tomorrow. I do have a sore throat. I've been run down the last few days. I slept a lot today. Things are in my ears. I have no idea what's going on. Hopefully I don't have anything besides a regular virus. And that's it. I'm going to get out of my way and your way. Here is my conversation with Dallas. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. With me today, I have Dallas. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I am doing well. It is a Monday night. I just got up from a nap, actually. I took a nap right before this. And
that's important.
I needed to be awake, and I didn't want to use coffee because then I would have been up all night. So I just want to thank you for being here, and I'm just going to get out of my way and your way. Dallas, the floor is now yours.
All right. Thanks so much. I'm happy to be on the show. I've been kind of thinking about what to talk about for the last little while. So I guess I'll start with a little background on who I am, how I grew up. So I grew up in a pretty nuclear family, like mom and dad stayed together. My mom was a little bit on the anxious side, so sometimes there was some tiptoeing around her in the household. I grew up kind of idolizing love, like kind of idolizing this, perfect idea of what love should look like. And I had a high school boyfriend that I dated for just a year and a half, and I was really heartbroken when we broke up. And so I was single in my 20s for about 9 years after that high school experience, because it was like extremely, I guess, like heartbreaking and soul shattering. And I kind of went back into my shell basically throughout all my 20s and kind of, grew myself and worked on myself. I went to school, I got my master's. So throughout my 20s, I was basically thinking of, men being something that's not as important to me, because like the only man that I knew from like my childhood hurt me so bad that like I just kind of avoided the whole thing. And then when I was 27, 28, I had a couple 1-year relationships with guys that I knew were safe. So I dated a few men in my late 20s that were really easygoing, really friendly guys, but I knew that, they couldn't hurt me because I felt like I wasn't completely invested. And so when I reached my 30s, when I turned 30, I moved to a brand new city in Canada. So I lived in Alberta, and I moved to this brand new city, and I got this really awesome job after finishing my master's, and I was feeling like really on top of the world. I had a lot of friends in that city already, so I was really excited to move there. So for the first 6 months, I was just enjoying being single, enjoying kind of my time getting to know the city and getting to know what my new career would look like. And, it was a really fast-paced career too. It was like really kind of stressful at times, but also really, really rewarding. And I was working for the public, and I was working for different charitable groups and stuff like that. So I felt a lot of meaning behind the work I was doing. And I had a ton of friends, and so we would go out sometimes, like obviously go to the bars and go to different like trivia. I remember that we would always go to trivia nights at this one bar. And so this one night we were out at this one bar, we were doing trivia. We were outside waiting for an Uber, and I remember looking over, and this guy was just staring at me. And I remember this feeling of like this guy's really cute and this guy's really attractive, but like we kind of had a little bit of a connection, just there on the street, like just completely random on the street. And I was about to get into an Uber. So I was about to get into an Uber to go to my friend's place. And, so him and I kind of had a little moment where we were chatting, and he said, "Do you mind if I get your number? Like, can you write your number down somewhere?" And I grabbed the Uber's, he had like a business card that I put my number onto, and I gave it to him. And I remember being in the cab and just feeling like that was a really weird interaction. And I was like, it could just be like, I'm really friendly right now. Like just had a few drinks, or just, feeling really charismatic. Like, I had been dating a couple people during that summer, but nothing really gelled. So I think I was going back into like a little bit of a shell. Like I've gone through these periods of, getting out of myself and then going back into my shell a little bit just to protect myself and just say like, I don't really care if I meet anyone. So I was in that place. I was in the place of like not really caring what happens. And
so we get back to So before, you meet this guy, and you have been going for, I guess, probably the last 12, 13 years of really being hesitant to date men. Did you ever go look deeper into any of that, or did you just always focus on your career and really not delve into what had happened?
Yeah, I never delved. I think because I kept thinking of myself as being a strong woman. I think because of what happened to me when I was 18, it made me crumble, like, until I was like 22. Like, it made me feel really low self-esteem until I was about 22. So I think I built myself to kind of protect myself against that by, you know, having a good career and having lots of friends. So I was like the epitome of like your strong woman. Like, if anyone would talk to me, it's like high confidence, high, you know, like charismatic, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's kind of who I was. And people would see me as like not necessarily the type to settle down. And I think that's rude. It's rooting from me, like being almost afraid of like finding someone that will hurt me again. Mm-hmm. So that's where I was coming from.
And as far as your family goes, did you have, was there anything at all going on with your parents? Like how you behaved in the house?
I would say, yeah, like we weren't allowed to show emotion. So I remember as a kid, like my sister, my sister's younger. So my sister, for some reason, had a good childhood. Like, she had an upbringing that things seemed to be going well for her all the time. Whereas I always seemed to be like moody. Like, they said I was like an old soul. Like, you know, when they say she has an old soul, but it's really like sadness and like just, I felt like I couldn't like voice myself. And I remember my mom just wanting us to be quiet, like wanting us to be muted. And I think, like, I definitely know now that it stems from my mom. Like, it's all this stuff completely stems from like me trying to earn her love and trying to show that I'm worthy, and like I'm like, even just me as I am, like if I'm sad, if I'm angry, if I'm whatever emotions I was feeling at the time as a kid, they were all mute. They're all like stuffed down, like snuffed. So I felt like, yeah. So
is it fair to say that with the first boyfriend that really broke your heart, that you were trying to do your best to earn that person's love and then it was rejected?
Yeah, I would say that. Like I said, I would say that I unfolded for him. Like I opened up to him, and it broke my heart when he left. And I think I didn't react in a way that I think a lot of people would have. Like, normally a breakup wouldn't unfold or like, you know, make you feel shattered as I did. But I just felt shattered because it's like, this is the first time I've opened up, do you know what I'm saying, to another human being. And so then I felt shattered because it's like the first time showing my real self to someone. Mm-hmm. So then I just went back into my shell for like all my 20s, like all like 9 years of it. So
makes total sense.
Yeah. Okay. And so when I met this guy, and like, I'll also say that I've always been purposefully unattracted to unattractive guys. So when I see a man that's like handsome and like he looks like, you know, he's got like, you know, good hair and good clothes and like is a really attractive man, I often just immediately avoid them. And I think that's also like a strategy from my childhood or from that breakup in high school. So I often go for like the goofy guys, or they, you know, like they're friendly, but they're safe. They're like, it's, yeah. So you kind of can get that picture. So this person, like my narc, when I met him on the street, he was just well-dressed, nice shoes, like beautiful to look at. Like, I remember he had blue piercing eyes, but I didn't think that he wasn't for me. Like, I didn't think he was out of my league because of how much he was like staring, and like he was asking me questions about who I am, and like, oh, like you're so beautiful, and like he was just so invested in me just in those first few minutes that I was like kind of letting my guard down already. Mm-hmm. But then the next day I gave him my number, but I was just kind of not waiting by the phone, so to speak. I was just like letting it go. Like, I completely let it go because I was like, it's just another one that's just gonna waste my time, or like, you know, like it's he's not really into me. But then he did message me, and we chatted for like 2.5 hours that first night. Like, it was like almost 3 hours, and just talking about, he was at a wedding at the time, and he was just saying, you know, like, what did you get up to the other night? I said, yeah, my friends came back to my apartment. We had a few more drinks, and, you know, it's really strange that we met and like we're already talking this much. And he said, well, we should go grab coffee. And so we went to grab coffee, and I met him. I'll say I met him in the rain, so it was dark when we met. So when I saw him, I was going to the coffee shop to meet him, and when I saw him in the full light, I realized that he had this like kind of cute and humble, like not goofy face, but like he had like this smile that was kind of like slanted, like kind of crooked. So I was like, okay, you're not completely perfect. You're like, you know, you do have some, you know, like like I could see humanity in his face, which now I realize I don't know what I saw, but like I could empathize with him. I could feel comfortable with him. And so we sat down for coffee, and I remember on the walk, we had coffee and then we went for a walk, and we were already holding hands. And, you know, he was saying, what are you up to for Halloween? And I really want to have kids one day because I want to take them out trick-or-treating. And I was 30 at the time, so I just felt like, oh, wow, like this guy wants kids, and he's attractive, and he's really, really into me. And so at the end of that date, you know, he drove me home. We were listening to My Girl by the Temptations, and I just remember thinking, like he just seems like wholesome. Like he just seems, you know, like who listens to the Temptations, like in their car driving around. Like it was just really nice. And then he got out of the car and he gave me a hug. He didn't even go in for a kiss or anything. Like it was just really respectful, and like he was a gentleman. And then we just, the next day, like we kept hanging out, and I was at the dog park with him, and he was telling me about his career, and he was telling me about his friends and his life. And he mentioned that he was in the military. And my first thought about the military is that they're a little more like regimented in their life. And I will say that I come from a background of a little more like liberal. I'd say like more like I would connect more with like kind of people that are like wallflowers, like kind of just like a little bit hippie, a little bit like for instance, I would burn like incense in my place. So that like kind of gives you an idea of like the kind of person I was. And it just felt like it was like really contrasted to like him being in the military and like very like well dressed and like
you guys
had a really clean car.
You guys are like Dharma and Greg.
Dharma and Greg. I was just going to say Dharma and Greg. It's exactly like that. So I was like
the 1950s version, Dharma and Greg.
Yeah, exactly. So we were really different, but then I just kept thinking, but like we just feel that I felt the connection to him already. So it felt like I didn't even have to choose him. Like it was just already happening. And looking back, I feel like maybe that was the first red flag. Like there's more to come, but like that was the first, like when I really think about it, I've never stunk that deep into someone so quickly. Like after, it was only a week, like until we were both like, let's be boyfriend, like let's label this, like we're exclusive. And usually it takes like a month, right? Like you get to know each other and get to know each other's friends. Like it took 2 months for him to meet my friends. And it was just him and I for those first 2 months, like almost 5 days a week we would be together.
Woo.
And it just was really intense. And it was just, it was really intense. And then when he did meet my friends for the first time, it was Halloween. And I mentioned, like, we went out and he mentioned Halloween, but come Halloween. So we went out with all my friends, and I just remember him making comments to me about my friends and saying, oh, like, your friends are a little bit like, like, I don't know if they like the military very much. Because when I told them I was in the military, they seemed to, like, scoff at it, and they seemed to, like he was already criticizing my friends. And at the time, like, I was obviously hanging out with a little more, like, liberal, like, whatever people, like, they're just like not as regimented, not as conservative in their views. So he just was already putting them down. And I said, oh, these are my friends, like I don't know what to say, like I'm sure they like you. Like he was more saying, like, I don't know if they like me. And I said, no, like I know that they like you, like it's fine. And so I was trying to reassure him that my friends liked him. And it was kind of more of the same. Like we hung out a few more times until Christmas, and he came home to visit my family. And then
so how long into the relationship is he coming home to Christmas?
3 months.
So 3 months in week one, you guys had discussed kind of children. You're holding hands on date one. Your boyfriend, labeled boyfriend and girlfriend after
1 week.
After 1 week. And on month 3, you are he's not just meeting your parents, he's coming to your Christmas in your hometown?
Yeah. And my hometown, I'll say that this was Alberta that I met him, and then we flew together to Ontario.
Okay.
So it's not just even like a dinner or an afternoon with my parents. It was like, let's fly across the whole country together. So it was, he had to obviously stay there for about 4 or 5 days in Ontario with us. So he stayed in my childhood home, like hung out with my parents and met them and everything.
So at this point, was there other stuff about the future or mirroring that he was doing in these 3 months where you said, like, this person, yeah, I'm Dharma, yeah, he's Greg, but we're really on the same page for what we want?
Yeah, it was. So we weren't talking about marriage or kids explicitly, but it just felt like he would always say I'm his soulmate. He would say, you're the one for me, and like I can't wait to grow old with you. Like it was long-term stuff. Like everything we talked about was long-term. So I felt like he was worth investing in, because at that point it was just sunshine and rainbows, and it was like we're in this together, and it felt like we were like two against the world. And I will say that he gave me a necklace that his mom and his brother's girlfriend also had. So this necklace was it comes up later too in the story. It's like it represented like being part of the club of his family, and like you're now one of us, like you're now one of our family. Like you wear this necklace to like show your love to me, and that was like the first thing that I felt really special. And I felt like I had this like hand carved, because it's like he went through this hand carved necklace thing that's like a little heart, and he's like, my mom has the same one, but it's like a different carving of the heart. And so I just felt like I was part of the club, part of his family's club. And I met his family at Thanksgiving as well. So it was just moving really quickly up until December. And,
so Canadian Thanksgiving, you met them. So that's like almost a full 2 months before that. So really after a month, you met the family. This has moved really fast. So you're hooked at this point. Yeah. Like you are hook, line, and sinker. And,
I'm hooked, yeah.
And, eventually, I just want to go off for 1 second. Did you eventually find that whole family thing creepy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's so many layers to his family.
Okay. Well,
yeah. Okay, I'll get into it.
We'll get there. I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask, because that's the first thought that came to my mind. But I've been doing this show for way too long, and I'm jaded, so I know something weird's coming. Sorry, continue.
And I'm going to go backwards.
Yeah.
I'm going to go backwards a little bit, because there was a few red flags in that first month. So before coming home to Christmas, before I met his family at Thanksgiving, we were really still like deep in love after, like I said, like after 3 weeks, we said our I love yous. And so we said we were camping, and it was like, and I will say that camping is like my favorite thing to do. And we went camping, and like, that was where we exchanged I love yous. So that was like really special for me, because it's like, oh, we're camping, and this is like where my happy place is, and we're exchanging I love yous. And it was just super romantic. And I would say about a month in, like a week after we said our I love yous, I just mentioned to him that the group I was with the night I met him was one of the people that was in my group, like of our friends I had dated previously. And so I just kind of I remember I was in the shower, and he was like in the bathroom brushing his teeth or something, like we were in the same room. And I was just like, oh, by the way, we're going to be seeing my friends later tonight. I just want you to know, like, in case it ever comes up, like I did used to date that one guy, the one person that I brought, like you met him that night, but you didn't know. But I brought him back to our apartment, and there was 4 of us, like, staying in my apartment. So it wasn't just him and I, but, like, I just want you to know that, like, there's a history there in case it comes up. And I thought it was me being, like, honest about it. And this was, like, a month in. So he opened the shower curtain. He's like, so you lied to me. And I said, I didn't lie. I didn't want, like, I just met you. I didn't want to say, like, oh, here's a guy I used to date, like, right away. And I just didn't think it was important. And because I didn't really know if, like, you and I were going to move ahead, and, like, I just didn't think it was relevant. And he accused me of lying already into that, like, in that first month. And I remember thinking it made me really uncomfortable. I remember that feeling in my stomach, feeling like I feel like I'm defending something I didn't do. Or I'm defending something that, like, there's nothing wrong, but he's thinking that there's something wrong. And that was the first time that he asked me about other men. And there was like lots of times after that he would ask me about previous, like either boyfriends or lovers or whoever, very, very like detailed. Like he would ask me like, what were they like in bed, and what was your ex-boyfriend like? How do I measure up to him? And I always chalk that up to like, oh, he must love me a lot because he cares about like how he measures up to these other men. But looking back, it's like that gave me the ick. Like it gave me that stomach feeling of like, I have something already to be ashamed of. Like, you know what I mean? Like having a past boyfriend or having a past person I dated, like he was already questioning me about that. And that was in 1 month, like in October. So that would happen like intermittently, I would say. Like it wasn't like in your face. Like it was like once in a while he would throw that comment and like, oh, like how many people have you been with? And like, what were they like? And like, just very intense questions. And they weren't like inquisitive, like, oh, I'm curious and I want to hear stories about your life. Like it was more like, you need to fess up about all your past experiences, like as if I was confessing. And so it made me feel the ick, but then I would just get over it in like a few hours because I'd be like, he's great. So like, he's fine. Like everything's fine. Like he asks those questions because he is curious about me and he like loves me or whatever, but I still felt like annoyed by it. So like, I would still like be like, no, you can't ask me those questions. Like that's like, you're crossing boundaries, but he kept crossing that kind of boundary throughout our entire relationship, at least definitely for that first year. So he came home I'll just jump back. He came home for Christmas, and I will say that my mom had been having mental health issues, and she had attempted suicide quite a few times. Like my mom had been going through a lot. Like she'd been going through over 5 years, a lot of issues with her mental health. And my dad pulled my ex aside and he said, I want you to like take care of my daughter because I don't know what's going to happen with her mom. And she's going to be checked into like a psychiatric hospital soon. And we don't know what we're doing just yet, but like, just know that like extra, like care or something. And he's like, oh, I'm like totally ready for that. Like I'm taking care of her already. I promise, like I'll do my best to do everything I can. Like he basically was like stepped up as the hero. Like he's like, yes, like I'm that person. And so my dad trusted him. Like everyone in my family loved him. And I already had I remember in January after Christmas, I already had feelings of lower self-esteem starting. And I think it was because he had already built me so high on this pedestal that I felt like I'm not really who he thinks I am. I must not be like, cause he keeps saying I'm like incredible and I'm like I'm the love of his life. But then he's also like jealous constantly. He would always ask me like, where are you going? Who are you seeing? Like, give me lists of names of who you're seeing. And so I constantly felt like in some ways I'm his perfect girl, but then in other ways he doesn't like the fact that I have a past, and he doesn't like the fact that like I've ever been with anyone ever. And so I felt this like duality with his love for me. And so I just kept like this, like, it's like this subtle feeling that like he's trying to make me into something, like trying to make me into his perfect girlfriend. And I just kept thinking like, I'm just a person. Like, you know how like after 3 months your flaws come out? Like everyone has flaws. Mm-hmm. And I kept being afraid. I'm like, I don't want him to see me like in my pajamas without makeup yet. Like, I don't want him to see me like, if I'm sick or if I'm in the washroom, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want him to know me as like in any way having like humanity or like having like flaws and stuff like that, because he thought I was so perfect. And so I remember feeling really insecure by January that like I wasn't living up to his standard or wasn't living up to like what he already thought of me. And so come March, my mom passed away. Like, she had died by suicide, and it was horrible. And I remember the first thing I thought of there's a lot of things I thought of when she died, but I was at work when I got the call from my sister. She's like, you need to come home. Mom's, passed away. You need to come back home. And I remember driving home, and I didn't think of my narc at the time. Like, I was just thinking of my family. And I got home and I was like, oh, I need to call him. But then I had this weird thought in my head that's like, I don't know if he can handle this. Like, this is a flaw. And now looking back, it's like so messed up to think of this, but like, I felt like I didn't want to tell him because that would mean that like something's flawed about me or my family. or something, you know what I mean? Like something's wrong. And I felt like I don't even want to call him because I don't know if he can support me. I don't know if he'll be able to say to me, like, it's all going to be okay. Or if, I don't know, like there's just already seeds of doubt. Like, and it's hard to look back to the exact moments, but there's already seeds of doubt that like, I'm not good enough for him. And me telling him this, and I remember him coming over. I did tell him, like, you should come over right now. Like, I have an emergency. And he came over and he was like the hero. Like, he walked in the house. He's like, what's up? Like, I will help with anything. And I said, I don't know if you can, I don't know if this is like, if you want to deal with this stuff, but like, I'm going to be going through something in the next little while because my mom just passed away by suicide. And like, I have to fly home immediately. Like, I have to go home. And he immediately was like, swooped in and he's like, oh, like, I'll book your plane ticket. Like, I'll do everything for you. Like, no, you just sit there. You just relax. And like, he hugged me and it was like, you know, I did feel consoled by him on that first day. But then flying home, and he was there for the funeral. And like, honestly, when I look back, I don't remember much of this. This happens when any parent dies, I think. Like, you just don't have memories of it. But I remember my sister saying to me, like, oh, like, your ex is like super like nice and like, wow, he's really taking care of you. And like, he's asking questions and he's just like, he's part of the family. Like, she's just like, I'm so glad he's here. He just looked like the hero. But then when we came back to the city, into like the summertime, like the spring, May, June, my job got a lot busier. And I remember I couldn't keep up with like the basic stuff of life. Like, I was trying to do, it's called grief-free yoga. And I was trying to go to yoga classes to kind of like grieve my mom. And, you know, going to these yoga classes and trying to keep up with work, I was not in my best capacity. Like, I was broken because of what happened to my mom, and my place was a mess. Like, my dog, you know, I'd only take her for 2 walks a day, like minimum. Like, I was just trying to like hold my head above water. And I remember that entire year, like, I just remember feeling like I was like drowning in like all the responsibilities I had, and I couldn't keep up. And by July, he came to my house and he said, I need to have a talk with you. Like, I don't know if we can stay together because I think we're super incompatible. I noticed that like things about your apartment aren't as clean as I'd like them to be. So if we ever were to live together in the future, like I just don't know if I can live with someone that's this messy. And he's like, I also don't know if you can take care of me. Like, it feels like you're not taking care of me right now. And I remember thinking, like, I'm trying to just survive. And when I look back, he didn't take care of me at all. Like, it was all about, you know, his idea of, you know, taking care of me over my mom's death was just like us going on date nights and us hanging out, us doing things between him and I, but he would never ask me how I'm doing. And I think because I'm such a like quote unquote strong woman, I never talked about it. I would always just take care of myself. So I never asked him for help. I never said like, oh, can I talk to you about my feelings, or can I talk to you about this? I never did that. But he also like didn't really like show that he cared. Like, he didn't really ask me how I was doing ever. And so by July, when he had this conversation with me, he sat me down and he's like, I've noticed all week, like, you haven't been paying attention to me. You haven't been returning my texts. I noticed your apartment's really messy. I don't think you can take care of me. And I remember feeling gutted. Like, I felt alone, and I felt like I'm trying to literally survive. Like, there's nothing that, like, we go through a lot of things in life, but I feel like that's one of the most difficult things I'll ever go through, is trying to like grieve my mom while like trying to keep a steady job. And then I felt really like small. I felt really like tired and exhausted. And he left my apartment, and I thought we were done. I thought we were broken up, and I was kind of relieved because I felt, okay, good. That's one less thing I have to do. Or it's like one less thing that I have to take care of. You know, I don't want to have to take care of him. And he hasn't been, honestly, like, because we kind of fell apart, I'll admit, after my mom died. Like, we just stopped communicating, and like, there's kind of bits on my part as well. But I definitely saw that he had like almost zero compassion for like what I was going through. And
so in a way, during that time, technically, you know, technically is a bad word. So you're going through, you know, your mom passing away, not just passing away in a regular manner, but by suicide. You're grieving that. You're trying probably to understand or come to terms with maybe a lot of things that happened maybe in your childhood. And then on top of that, which is already difficult to deal with, just maintaining eating, sleeping, going to work is difficult.
Yeah.
You're in a depressed state, a confused state, and it's a normal thing to hit a rough patch in your relationship, obviously, during this time. And you at this time, you're able to see, are you saying to yourself, this person has been acting, and like the person right now is the real person who really is not showing interest in, instead of saying my place is messy, maybe there's a reason my place is messy. Maybe I'm having difficult being a human right now, and like taking care of myself with doing basic needs. At that point, are you saying, like, because you're about to take a little break from him, that this person isn't what I signed up for, or is not the person everyone thinks he is?
So at the time I had zero compassion for myself.
Okay.
Like at the time I had zero compassion for myself, and I didn't see. Okay, like when I was in it, I didn't see that I was grieving, if that makes sense. Like, okay. I kind of did see I was grieving, but I also didn't give myself any allowances. I was like, no, you still got to do this. You still got to like show up. You still got to be a good girlfriend. Like, to me, his criticism made sense in my head, because I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I'm dropping the ball. Like, go ahead and leave it. Like, it was like me being defeated. Like,
you're still trying to prove yourself during this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Which is even extra tiring than how you even presented it before. You're trying to prove yourself on top of everything still.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And that, you know what? Looking back, that made it so much more exhausting.
Yeah, that's exhausting. You were already exhausted, and now you've taken on this extra duty. Mm-hmm. Okay. I get it.
Of being like an attentive, of being an attentive girlfriend to him. Like, I felt like I was failing him. So I felt like I was failing him in terms of like, I'm not showing up for him. And of course, like, I'd caused a few, like, we had a few fights that summer, like a few arguments. Like, one time we were leaving for a trip and we were in the grocery store and I couldn't find ice. And I just had a meltdown. Like, what are we going to do if we don't find ice? And like, I just like was like yelling, and like I was angry. And I had to leave the store, and I just left the store. He came out and he's like, why are you so dramatic? And he would never understand my anxiety. He would never understand, like, he didn't connect the dots between my mom's death and like me having meltdowns or just like an emotional outburst or something. You know how every couple fights, whether it's ice or directions or forgetting a map or like just stupid things. Mm-hmm. And I just never felt like I was allowed to have a meltdown or allowed to have sad feelings about my mom, because that would be a flaw, right? That would be like something that's not like, except like, because when I would show him that part of it, he would tell me, oh, but you're so amazing, and like, don't worry, like, life is incredible, like, life's going to be great, our life is going to be great, don't worry. Like, he would never acknowledge my actual pain. He would just kind of skirt around it and say, but you're amazing, don't worry, like that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel amazing. So I think that's why when he broke up, or his first attempt to break up with me in July, I was super relieved, because I'm like, I don't know why, but I couldn't break up with him on my own. I just like, I felt like our relationship was slowly going down the tubes, but I also still idolized him. Like, I still thought he was amazing and perfect. And I felt like I was the one that was like fucking up. Like, I was the fuck up and the person who's like slacking in the relationship. So part of me was just relieved, because I'm like, good, he just finally gave up, or finally saw that I'm like not like I'm not holding it together. And it gave me really low like that whole summer I had low self-esteem, because I just felt like I couldn't function, but I didn't have the compassion for myself at that period. Like, that came later. Like, so I did start to get compassion for myself later. So that first year I was still trying to be perfect, still trying to keep up, appearances with everyone. And so he breaks up with me, he leaves, I'm relieved. I spend the night in bed and I'm like, good, I get a good night's sleep. Like, I'm just like, kind of, like I said, I'm in survival mode. I'm just like, anything that's like feels good, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to eat whatever foods, I'm going to like just keep going. And then he like comes in the morning and he slides in bed next to me and he's like, oh, I'm sorry for doing that. I didn't mean it. Like, let's just continue. and I remember I accepted it. I accepted his return, like just coming back to it and feeling like relieved because like, oh, okay, maybe he does love me. Maybe he does like, you know, see me and all this stuff. And, yeah, so that was in July. And then we had been planning a trip to Nashville. So him and I, after all the things that we'd been through, we had been talking about going to Nashville for a while because both of us are really into music. And that was one thing, a bond we did have is music. And so we were planning this trip to Nashville for October. And so leading up to October, I was doing a lot of like soul searching too. Like I went on a wilderness retreat. Like I mentioned, I love camping. Like I have a forestry background. So I'm a forester by trade and I love nature and stuff like that. And that's where I said before, like it doesn't really meld that well with him being in the military, but it just worked. So I went on all these like wilderness retreats in October and I was trying to like find myself, if that makes sense. Like I was just like really soul searching after my mom died and trying to better myself, but it sounds really messed up, but I was trying to better myself for him and to be able to like step up to the plate so that I can be a good girlfriend to him again. I was trying to like shortcut my grief, right? Like I was trying to just plow through it so that I can just be like normal again and be over it and, you know, show up for him and be a perfect girlfriend for him again. So I went on these like wilderness retreats in late September of that year. And I came back and I had like, you know, I'd lost a little bit of weight and I was like, had a glow in my face because it was like a week-long thing that like I did like a fast and I did, it's like this thing where you don't leave a circle in the woods for 4 days and you fast and you just journal and it's kind of like a meditation thing. And he's like, oh, you look so good. Like I don't remember you looking this good since like I met you. And the way he said it was kind of like I don't remember exactly how he said it, but it definitely had a connotation like you haven't looked good. Like, and right now you look so good. Like what you did was good. Like what your retreat went really well. Cause I can see that like your appearance, you look young, you look fresh, all this stuff. And I felt really confident. I felt really good. Cause I'd felt so like gross and like, I don't know, I just like kind of let myself go like the past few months. And so I had a high confidence. I felt so good. Like I remember feeling a lot. Like I just felt like, you know, like I was in touch with myself. I felt very connected to myself. I didn't yet see him for who he was, but I also knew that I didn't really like to be around him. Like I knew at this point I didn't enjoy being around him, but I felt still that I needed to be with him, if that makes sense. So part of me like knew that I was meant to like still continue this path of like trying to get to know myself and stuff. So my friend contacted me. She said, oh, I heard you guys are going to Nashville. I'm heading there myself. Like I'm driving from Ontario down in my van and I'm already going there. Do you want to like meet up? Cause I saw that you're going there. And I said, yeah, I do. Like, this is like an old childhood friend of mine that like I hadn't really hung out with since, you know, Christmas or something. And she was from my childhood. Like I knew her when we were like 12. And so this person, like, I felt really drawn to like do the trip just with her. And now that I look back, I know that was a dick move. I know that was like me, like basically it was supposed to be me and my narcs trip, but I did choose to, I said to him, I really want to do this trip just with her. Like she's my childhood friend. Like my mom knew her really well. She knew my mom really well. I just feel like I really need that kind of like girl bonding, like that girlfriend. Like I just want to feel that like that bond between like her and I feel like will do really well for me. Like I feel like it will do wonders for like my mental health and like I need this. And I said it to him in a way that like I was trying to be really careful with his feelings. I was trying to be like apologetic for us having planned this trip. But I said, I just really, really, really need this. And then you and I can plan a trip separately, like in the future. And at first he was just like, well, I booked off time for this. And like, I guess like he did the whole, like, I guess thing. Like, yeah, go for it. Like is what he said. And so I did. And, you know, looking back, I was kind of selfish that year, honestly. Like I was in survival mode. I just was doing anything that like made me feel like any sense of who I am because of what happened with my mom. So I just felt like a childhood friend, like what's more perfect than that. So that was only a week that we went to Nashville, and I came back and things were just like, he really took it to heart that I left and that I didn't go with him. And I understand that. Like, I think any normal person would feel that way and feel disappointed and left out. And so I did everything. Like I said, like, we'll plan a new trip together. Like, you and I, we'll go to Hawaii or anything like that. And it just like, it was like I broke his heart. Like, it was like, I don't know, like I felt really guilty for a really long time. And I knew why I did it. Like, I knew why I went with her, but I just like, and then at this point too, I was also starting to snap out of it. I was starting to like see that I was misbehaving or see that I was trying to like act out, and I was pulling back. So I was giving him the full reins, if that makes sense. Like, I was giving him, he won every argument after that. Like, it was like I was giving him full reign over our relationship, like to completely like call the shots basically. And I kind of settled into it. And then,
so
by the next,
you were given that much guilt about the trip that at that point you wanted to be, you didn't want to hear arguments anymore. You didn't want to hear this, that, or the other coming from the other side of how you were being treated or how you were made to feel because you went. And now instead of fighting, you're just saying yes and being submissive to all of the needs of your ex.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So he, like, the level of guilt that he made me feel was like, you know, like I felt like I abandoned him. And I felt like I had to make it up to him. So it was like this constant, like I said, I would make it up to him with like a Hawaii trip and all that stuff, but that wasn't enough. Like, it never felt like that was, I just felt like he was very slighted. He was very like, he didn't like to be chosen over some, or he didn't want me to choose anyone else over him. And his mom called me, and, you know, I'll get into his mom stuff in a bit, but like his mom called me and she said, you know, like, what's like, she was really sympathetic, and she's like, I know, like, woman to woman, like, sometimes we have to get away and sometimes we have to do this, but like, my son is very fragile and my son is this and my son is that. She was just very like, why aren't you on our team? And like, and I felt like I owed it to her as well. Like, there was a little bit of like, I owed it to his family to like to make it up to him and to make it up to the whole family. But because I'd been like a quote unquote, like, bitch to him all summer. You know what I mean? Like, just acting out because of my mom's death and stuff. And he told me, and this is weird, like, he told me when I was grieving my mom, he's like, my mom said that you're probably going to be a bitch this summer. And like, I just thought that's a weird thing to say, like, to your son. Like, you should probably say like, oh, your girlfriend's going to have a hard time this summer. That's like what you should say. But no, like, your
girlfriend's going to have a hard time,
like,
and she's going to need support, not the polar opposite.
Yeah, like her focus was always on her son and like how he was being treated and what was going on with him, which I totally, and looking back, even that's totally normal to like for a mom to be like, but what wasn't normal is the amount that she would go out of the boundaries with us. Like, I know that he would tell her things about me that I never gave permission for. Like, he would tell her things. Like, there's a few nights that like we would drink and stuff like that, and he said, "Oh, like, I'm pretty sure that he would say like, had a few too many, or like had this and had that." And so she would bring it up sometimes. Like, she would try to insinuate that I had a drinking problem, and I didn't. Like, I wasn't like, I would go out with my friends like twice a month, and when we did, of course, we'd have like, you know, we'd go out and like I would qualify as binge drinking, but it wouldn't be like I'm drinking every night kind of thing. And I will say that she was an alcoholic too.
So he's sowing the seeds of, I guess, of a mini smear campaign of how you act to his family. That's an untruth, maybe a kernel of truth that you went out drinking, but not, you know, he's sowing untruths.
Yeah. Basically. And I mean, yeah, he would relay things to me all the time from her. So he would say, oh, my mom says this, my mom says that about me. Like, so he would say, my mom was like, she's really stubborn, isn't she? Like, in terms of me, like, being stubborn. And I don't like about really silly things, like not being stubborn, but just me trying to like hold boundaries. So to her, my boundaries were being stubborn. So basically, like that would come up a lot, and I noticed that during the night, his phone would go off like at midnight or at 11, and it would be paragraphs of text between the two of them, and things about like her emotional state and her like what she was going through and stuff like that. And it was very like, he's like, oh, I have to go call my mom right now. She's like in a crisis. And he'd talk to her for an hour and then come back to bed. And I often felt like there was just like a weird dynamic between the two of them. And so he was raised by her being a single mom because his dad left when he was like 7, and he left in a very horrific way. So I know that my narc was abused as a child. And I think that his mom was kind of like using them as like using him as like a surrogate husband in a way. Like he would run her errands. They would text all day long about everything that she needs, everything that she wants and stuff like that. And I'd go over to their house sometimes. And I remember about a year after I went to Nashville and all that stuff happened, I was still in the doghouse, by the way. Like I was still like not fully back in his like nook.
You still were not part of the family.
Yeah, like it felt like nothing I did was good enough because I went to Nashville on a trip with a friend. Like nothing I did. Nothing. Like it felt like it was taken to an extreme. Like it's like something that usually happens in a relationship that usually stays between the two people. It just was throughout the entire family, and everyone knew that I don't know, like it felt really like I was never able to like meet their like expectations. And he stayed with his mom when he broke his foot. And I remember he said, do you mind going to get me some sandals? Just, I want to be able to hop around without having to slip on a shoe, like, and tie my laces up and stuff. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And I felt good because I felt like, okay, like, I feel like maybe this is the thing that makes me part of the family again. This is the thing. Or like, like just ongoing care of him is the thing that will make them like accept me again. And so I went to I just went to like a sporting retail store. Like it wasn't an expensive store. It wasn't like, a fashion store or anything. Like I just went to get basic sandals, and I brought them to her apartment. And I will say that she's like very fashion minded, like has Gucci bags, has like expensive like perfume, like she's a hairdresser, she like, or hairstylist, I should say, and like makeup to the nines. Like she's just very done up all the time. And so I bring these shoes to the place, to her apartment, and the first thing she says when I open the wrapping, she's like, oh, like she starts laughing, and she's like, oh, you thought these would be good enough? Like no, he can't wear these. Look at it, they're so ugly. Like, and I just couldn't believe it because I had like a really long week already. And I just felt like everything was bubbling to the surface. Like I felt like I was working really hard at my job and working really hard at the relationship, and her laughing at literally like at the shoes I just went out of my way to buy. It just felt like gutting. It felt like this is like, you've never liked me. Like this is like the thing that I'm doing to like try to help your son and try to like take care of him because he's staying with her. Like it already felt like I wasn't able to take care of him because we were living together, but he's like staying with his mom. Mm-hmm. And I started crying because I just felt very overwhelmed, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like what did you want me to buy? Like, what kind of sandals did you want me to buy? And I felt very on the spot, and like, he's in the room and he's sitting on the couch and he's just like emotionless, like staring blankly ahead. And like, I had many moments like this with him where I would show emotion. Like I'd be crying, or something's happening with me where I'm like actually feeling an emotion, and he would just be like a stone, like just nothing, no expression on his face. And she looked at him, she's like, console your girlfriend, like what's going on? Like I don't know, like what's happening right now. But I was crying from what she said. So then I left. Like I basically like had it. Like it was like that feeling of like, I'm not good enough, and I haven't been good enough for this family forever. So I left, and I just was so awkward.
So did you feel here that maybe, you were you had an issue with your family when you were younger, and now here you're being, in a sense, rejected, not just by him, but by the family as a whole. And did that add to what was going on at the same time, that now it wasn't just one person? You were trying to prove yourself to this family, and again, this family is not playing with a full deck when it comes to you.
Yeah, it's because it came out of left field, because I thought most people would be polite, like, oh, thanks so much. Like, they might not like the sandals, but they might be like, in the back of their head, they think, oh, we're not going to use these sandals, but thank you. Like, that's how I thought a normal human would react. But the fact that she had no problem, like, laughing, do you know what I mean? Like, or like, no problem just saying, like, these are really ugly, or like, I felt humiliated, basically. And I felt like already, like, humiliated by his family to begin with, because I felt like the problem. I felt like I was the one that's like not treating her son well, and like I knew like I was taking care of him every chance I could, but I was also like studying for my exams and stuff. So anyway, so I kissed him and I said, I'm gonna see you later. Like I want to go home and sleep. Like I'm exhausted. And I tried not to make a big deal of it, but I was still like actively crying. And like she went in the other room. She went to the bathroom because she felt awkward. And then I went home and I texted him and I apologized. And I look back and this is the kind of stuff I get embarrassed about, because I texted him and I said, I'm so sorry for like being emotional. I'm so sorry for crying. I'm so sorry for like making a scene. And he said to me, you made my mom cry. And I was like, how? Like in my head, I was like, how did I make her cry? And I'm like, oh, was she crying after I left? And he's like, yeah, because you made her feel awkward, and you leaving made her feel weird. So she, like he basically was saying, you owe my mom an apology. And at the time I didn't know what to make of that. I just I put it to the side, but I know now that like that was pretty messed up. Like it was just, I don't know. And maybe it's me being sensitive. Like at the time, especially, I thought I was just being oversensitive, but I just felt like uncomfortable and I also don't know how I made her cry. And so I sensed that there was like a weird victim hero relationship that they had, like her being a victim, him being the hero. Mm-hmm. And because maybe their childhood, he would play like hero to her because her, like his dad left and she never remarried or had a boyfriend after that, like after he was 7 years old. So this guy's like he's 28 now, like a full adult. And he's like, I don't know. There's so many more examples of that, but mm-hmm. it felt very, very codependent between them. Mm-hmm. And I knew I knew that he would always choose her. Like, I hate to say it, but like he would choose her over me if it came down to it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. Maybe that's like fine. And a lot of people love obviously everyone loves their mom and loves their family. But I just felt if it came down to it, he would always like cater to her emotions over mine. Mm-hmm. Even if she was a complete asshole to me, which came up later. Like she was continuously an asshole to me, and like he would just like not even see it. So anyway, so I felt like after that year, it felt like we were kind of like the dust was settled. Like he kind of got over Nashville. Like he got over what basically like that whole year of me trying to like rediscover myself and like not abandon him, but like me basically I was just doing my own thing because I was just trying to get over my mom's death. So year 3, but it was just constantly like, I'm not in the nook yet. I'm not in the place where I was in the beginning. And it gave me such low self-esteem. Like how I was before I met him, I was great. I was like 9 out of 10 for like my confidence and my self-esteem. But then after I'd been through all this with him, like it was like slowly dwindling because he stopped giving me affection. He would like I wouldn't say his abuse was like, what's the word? Like, it wasn't outward. It wasn't obvious. Like his abuse was more like stonewalling and like ignoring and like going days without messaging me and holding things like a promise, like a carrot in front of my face. Like I might marry you. Like I might have kids with you. And And him moving in with me was kind of like the next step. Like it felt like that was a big commitment from him. So we were living together. And yeah, and like there was just like a continuous devaluation of just, you know, you're not the same girl I met. I had gained weight by that time, weight that I've lost, by the way, because like I felt like I gained weight because I was so stressed. And so finally, like we moved into another house. Basically, we moved around a lot in the city. And he said, so I'm being deployed. And so he told me that he was going on deployment. And then right before he was about to leave, he was like spouting all these things to me, like, I want to marry you. I want to have kids with you. Like, you're my person. And I didn't believe them right away because I was like, you haven't said this stuff in years. Like, I don't believe you. But then he continued to do it. Like he ended up going to Iraq. And then when he was in Iraq, we would video chat. And he said, you know, I've been thinking about a lot, like, especially being here, what we went through. Like, we've gone through a lot, like with your mom and like everything that, you know, like it feels like we've invested so much into it already. Like, why would we, like, why give it up? Like, and so he said, why don't you come to Bali with me? And I said, yeah, like I could do that. Like, it's, he said, it's my leave. Like, he gets like a leave after 4 months. So he invited me to Bali, and I thought that was like, I honestly thought that trip would be like kind of a reinvigoration of our relationship, because when he was away, I really missed him, and I could tell that he missed me, or I thought that he missed me. And so we were talking the entire time he was away. I booked a plane ticket to Bali, and leading up to it, okay, so the biggest thing about Bali is leading up to it, I like did so much self-care, you know what I mean? Like self-improvement. Like I whitened my teeth. I did tanning. I like worked out. I worked out for a whole month, and I lost like, I think at least 10 pounds over a month. And it was just like, I felt good. I felt like, okay, we're on a good track. And so I get on the plane, and I'm going to Bali. And, you know, in Vancouver, there's a big flight delay. And so I had to stay in a hotel in Vancouver, and it ended up being like 42 hours to get there. Ugh. And it was like really long, and like the longest flight I've ever done. And when I was about to leave for my morning flight in Vancouver, I texted him over WhatsApp, because WhatsApp at the time was all he could use. And I could tell that he was active, because it said active at 3 a.m. And I could see that he was active, and I just said, hey, I'm about to leave on my flight. Just let me know, like, you know, like kind of like saying goodbye. And like I was kind of expecting him to text back. And I saw that he was active, but he wasn't texting back. And then, so I got in the flight, and it's 13 hours to get to China. And I was in Guangzhou, China. And I got off the flight, and he still hadn't texted me. And I got off the flight, and I said, hey, what's up? Like, I messaged you yesterday, and just wanting to like check in with you to make sure the time's okay that I arrived. And he's like, yeah, it's okay. Like, he was just acting really like lackluster, like really like, and I'm exhausted, and I felt this pit in my stomach, like, oh my God, like, is coming here a mistake? Like, he's going to be like distant like he was before. Like, he's going to be this and that and the other thing. And like, I just was worried about what it would be like between us. And then I got to the hotel in China. Like, I was staying in another hotel before I got to Bali. And I messaged him. I said, can we have a quick phone call before I come? And he's like, yeah. And then I called him, and he's like, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. And I'm like, what is the elephant in the room? And he's like, that, like, things aren't working with us. Like, he was just like, we can do this trip together, but I don't know what this is anymore. And it just came out of nowhere. Like, it came out of nowhere, and I was like, the entire summer we were building up to something, it felt like. And I felt really gross. Like, I just felt like disappointed, and I went to bed. I went to sleep in this hotel, and I woke up, and then I flew to Bali, and I was way less excited at this point. Like, you know, just having gone through like all this stuff, like that entire month to prep for the trip, and like I was feeling like it would be like a romantic trip. And I showed up, and I said, you don't have to meet me at the airport. I was just trying to be like easygoing. And he was at the Airbnb that I had booked for us. And I'll mention too that he brought a friend with him. So he brought like another guy who was in Iraq, like doing his tour. Mm-hmm. It was the two of them and me together on the trip, which, like, looking back, I probably shouldn't have agreed to that, because it was supposed to be just like me and him. But this other guy was with us on the trip. So they're already at the Airbnb. I texted him when I arrived, and he didn't text back. Like, it was, I knew the address because I knew where they were staying. So, like, I was like, fine, I'll get a nice taxi and go. And I was expecting him to be there to, like, help me with my luggage or something, like, just be greeting me, like, after 4 months. And I get to the villa, and I open the fence, and, like, I walk in, and it's like a feeling of, like, am I even at the right place? Like, it was, like, empty, like, no one was there. And I walk upstairs, and, like, I can hear the shower running. And so I go up and I shout to him, like, hey, I'm here. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll be right down. Like, and then I go out to the sun porch thing. Like, it's a beautiful villa too. Like, this is like one of those places that you book in Bali, and it's like $200 a night, but it's like a 4-bedroom with a pool and a jacuzzi. Like, it was so beautiful. But all I could think of was, like, it just feels like our relationship is about to end, and I'm here. Like, why am I here? And he walked down the stairs, and he said, oh, like, what's up? Like, he was just, like, treating me like a friend. Mm-hmm. And he looked at, like, there was, like, I got poison ivy a couple weeks before, and it kind of scarred on my leg. And he's like, oh, what's that? Like, instead of hugging me, he's just like, oh, what's that? Like, that's weird. And then, so I'm, like, showing him, like, my, like, little scab on the side of my leg, and I just felt, like, nothing but, like, gross. Like, I just felt disgusting to him, and, like, I felt like he was repulsed by me. Like, that's how low my self-esteem felt. It's just, like, it's weird talking about, but, like, I expected it to be back to normal because we'd been talking like that all summer. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like nothing went through his mind to ever consider my feelings. Like, the fact that I just flew 42 hours, the fact that, like, I might be tired, or I might miss him. Like, I missed him, and I went to give him a big hug, and he's just, like, already, like, on me about my, like, leg rash or something. Like, I'm, like, so imperfect to him that he has to point it out. And it made me feel so, like, small. And I was like, why are you focused on my leg, like, my poison ivy, when, like, I haven't seen you in 4 months? And that was the first moment on that trip that I realized, like, this, like, it's just heartbreaking, like, to feel him just not give it, like, a crap at all that I was even there. And
to travel 42 hours to get there.
Yeah.
Then when you're almost there, to be told that, you know, your relationship is basically over in his mind, why do it at that point, you know, while you're already where you're almost there, where you're more than halfway mm-hmm. on your trip? I mean, do it while you're still in Alberta. I mean, then you can just travel in 3 hours to Ontario.
I know. I've gone through this so many times, and there's more to this trip. Like, I feel like I could have used this time just for this trip because it was so unbelievably, like, awful. So this trip was 10 days, and I think every single day of it had different things that he did that were, like, and I look back at this, and I'm like, how was I still there? How did I still go to the villa? Like, I don't know. And that's why I know that I was sucked into him so much. Like, everything that he, like, told me about myself, I thought was true. So, like, him telling me that, like before he left, he told me, like, I was a cookie that's done baking and that I'll never change because I was 33 at the time. He's like, you're a cookie. You're like one of those cookies that's done baking. Like, you can't go back and unbake the cookie. Like, he was kind of telling me, like, I'm flawed. And I'm like, I don't know. I always felt like I was flawed in his eyes. And so him building me up all summer again, him, like, saying, actually, I want to marry you. Actually, like, you're my soulmate. And he really laid the sauce thick the entire summer before I came to Bali. And enough that, like, I was fully, like, back in, like, I was committed. So for me to show up and then he's back to his old ways, even worse, like, even not only back to his old ways, but, like, just, like, giving as little of a shit as you can imagine that, like, his girlfriend's there to see him. Do you know what I mean?
And he brought a friend to watch the whole thing. So I'll go into what happened on the trip. So we go on this, like, island tour. Like, I could probably name the cities. It's fun. So I get to Seminyak, and then we go to the Gili Islands, and the Gili Islands are really fun because it's an island with no roads, and it's just super cool. Like, I was and this is the thing, I was so excited for the trip that I didn't want to, like, ruffle any feathers because I was like, I'm
super excited to be there and I just want to have fun. Like, I'm that kind of person that just, whatever, I'll take a positive from anything, right? Like, I'm like, I'll do this trip with my ex. Like, even if it sounds weird, we're going to do it. So at this point, I kind of knew that, like, we were going to be exes by the end of it, but I felt like I was still in love with him and I still wanted to, like, have him in my life, even though we were done. Like, we had a weird dynamic. So we went to this island called the Gili Islands, and it's super cool. And we go on this boat, and we get there, and it's just like cool, like place to be. You ride around on bikes, and there's like little like horse and buggy situations where you just like load up your suitcases and stuff, and they take you on a horse and buggy to like your villa and stuff. And I was just having the time. Like I would have moments on the trip where I was like having the time of my life, but then I would like look back and think, oh, but we're broken up, and like I'm devastated. It is a weird duality between like me trying to forget it and trying to like keep up with like showing. I'm still trying to show him that I'm worthy of him, if that makes sense. Like I'm still trying to like be the cool, fun girl that's like, it's cool that we just broke up. It was really weird. So second day, third day, we're still together. There's still this like third guy on the trip with us. And the third day, we, so we all have a few drinks. We're all like kind of loose, like kind of like swimming around we were swimming in the pool and stuff. His friend goes to bed, and then it's just my narc and I in the pool alone. And he's like, just so you know, like 6 days ago, I did hook up with someone in Bali before you got here. Oh. And I said, okay, like why? And okay, I'll mention too that like him and I had talked about doing a threesome, and we had like nonchalantly talked about like not being poly necessarily, but just being with other people. And I think looking back, that was a way for me to just like open something up that we would be like more connected to each other, through something. So he dropped this bomb on me, and I'm like 3 drinks deep, and I felt I was so committed to still having fun on this trip, and this sounds so shameful, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but I was like, okay, I'm pissed that you didn't tell me. Like, I'm pissed that, like, you know, like, you and I have been sleeping together since I got here, and I didn't know. And I'm pissed, like, yeah, just everything about it was like, I'm just pissed. Like, you and I had talked about having, like, a threesome or, like, having a third person in the relationship just for fun. And this was when we were like in a good spot, like that previous year or whatever. And I said, but we never really solidified that. And like, I never gave you permission to like go off and like, I don't know, like it felt somehow in my head, I didn't think it was cheating, if that makes sense. Like it's so embarrassing.
Because you felt that you guys were gonna have a threesome, that gave him permission, or at least a pass in your mind to cheat and to have zero repercussions. In a way, I felt like maybe he thought that was me giving him a hall pass. Like, cause you know, like people that go on deployment, they get, sometimes girlfriends will give their boyfriends a hall pass. It's just, I know that that's a thing. And the way he was telling it to me in the pool, it didn't sound, okay, like sounds fucked up, but like it didn't sound serious. It was like, oh, and just by the way, I hooked up with someone 6 days ago. I'm like, so sorry I didn't tell you. I knew that we were talking about like he kind of looped it into that conversation about having a threesome. And it just like, in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to admit that he just cheated on me. Like, I can't handle that. Like, it's almost like I decided for myself, like, I can't handle that because I'm in a foreign country. And because if I admit to myself that that's what just happened, I'll have to like leave him, go do my own thing in like Southeast Asia by myself. And I felt like just scared. Like I felt like really alone, and oh man, it was like, it's so traumatizing to, when I put myself in that pool again, I feel like actual PTSD symptoms, because it's like I should have reacted a certain way and I didn't. And I think that's where sometimes I do feel like symptoms of trauma, because I wasn't fully processing what was happening then, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Because I was there in the moment, and I was like so committed in like to having fun and to like
maybe winning him, like, it sounds so bizarre, but like winning him back, or like trying to like keep him in my life, that I was just trying to be like cool with it. And so at the time I said, yeah, I'm really pissed off that you didn't tell me, but like, it's whatever. I know sometimes people have, you know, they hook up and it's just physical. I know, like, whatever, like, I'm just going to let it go. Like, that's kind of what I said to him. We're like, you know, we've already broken up. Like, let's just enjoy our trip, basically. And so we kind of did it, but he was acting really weird after he told me that. And he was acting like really nice to me, but like he was, you know, like not groveling, but like he felt guilty. I could tell that he felt a little bit guilty. But the only reason now I look back that he felt guilty of is because there's more to the story. So the fourth day and the fifth day that after he told me, he would go out we would be in bed together, and I would have a shower, and I'd be exhausted because we're like in Bali doing stuff all day long. So I'd be like exhausted. So I fell asleep at like 10 p.m. He would go out every night outside of the villa, outside of my bedroom. And like, he would say, like, I'm going to listen to music. Like, I'll be right back. Like, I'll like, you know, like, I'm only going to be like half an hour. So he'd go outside of the villa, and he like, yeah, like, I know now that he was texting this person. Like, he was calling this girl, this other person that he'd met there. The entire time that I was on the trip with him. So I'd be in bed, and he'd go out to the porch or whatever and like call her and text her. And at the time I had no clue, but it was only after, and I'll admit to like checking his phone near the end of the trip, like I could tell that like that was what was happening. And there were points in the trip where I just felt so like effed off. Like I thought that we were doing the trip as like friends in a way. Like, we climbed a mountain together, and halfway up the mountain, he like just left me. Like, I was with this guide, and I said, oh, like, I just need to go tie my shoe. I need to have some water. And he like never looked back and like to see where I was. He kept climbing up this like stupid mountain, and I'm like back, and I'm like just with this guy, and I'm like, oh, can you shout to him to like stop and wait for me? And my narc just kept walking, and I know he could hear us. And like, it felt like he was just saying like, I'm done with this one. Like, I'm just done with this one. And I felt so like objectified, and like, what am I even doing here? Like, I just kept thinking, like, what am I doing on this trip? And this is only like day 5. And the next day we went to the market, and it's like in Ubud. So Ubud has like all the temples and the cool markets and stuff. And like, it was so cool. Like, when I look back, I do appreciate that, like, we were there, and like, I was there, and I went through these markets and like really cool stuff. And we had plans to separate for the day and meet up again for dinner, for sushi. So him and I like were split up for the day, and we split up for the day, and we were making plans for dinner. And it was like 4 p.m. I'm like, hey, what time do you want to meet for dinner? And he's like, oh, I already ate. And I said, oh, like, okay, so what? I should just go grab dinner by myself? Like, what's happening? And he's like, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And I meet up with him, and he's like, so I've been having symptoms of like an STD from this girl that I met. And I said, okay, like, that's kind of messed up, but whatever. And he's like, so I had to go get an STD check at this like clinic in Bali. Just like, this whole story is so messed up. Like, he went to get this STD check at the clinic, and then he went to go eat by himself. Like, we had these dinner plans, and he just like went to go eat by himself. And so by this point, this day, this is the exact time where I was like, I'm done. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know who I'm on vacation with. Like, this is completely done, and I'm doing my own like thing. So I rented like my own villa, like down by the south end. It's like I forget what the village is called, but like, it's like South Beach, like one of the south sides of Bali. Mm-hmm. I went there by myself for 3 days, and I just stayed there by myself. I just decompressed from what just happened. I kind of just like didn't know. Like at this point, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know if we were actually broken up, because him and I had broken up so many times, and he had just cheated on me, but I didn't think it was, I like justified it as not cheating. And it felt he was like texting me the entire time I was gone, by the way. Like, he was just, my phone was like being lit. Like, just like, I had to like block him eventually by the end of the trip. And then at the last night, I turned my phone back on, like I turned it off block. And then, I called him and I said, okay, like, can we talk? Like, I don't know. So I guess I wasn't done. So him and I met at the villa I was at. So he came to meet me and we did have like a last night together. Like, it was kind of romantic. It was kind of like, whatever. Like we had like a jacuzzi there and everything. And it was the most romantic. It was what I wanted, if that makes sense. Out of the entire trip, like what I pictured happening was like us in like the pool together in the hot tub and like on the beach together, like doing romantic stuff. And he gave me that the last night. And I'm ashamed to even like admit that I would like take him back after all this. But like that last night, like it felt like a good way to just close it off. Like we both knew we were kind of done with the relationship. And then I flew back to Canada. So I flew back to Canada and I just felt like traumatized. Like I felt very, like I didn't know what just happened. Like, and so when I got back to Canada, I just felt really, really depressed and really, really confused. And like everything that we'd gone through, I just felt like he wasn't telling me the full story too. And about 3 weeks later, he said to me, I am planning to go to Australia. Like I want to do, like, that's kind of what I'm going to do next as like a single person. And I said, well, like what's in Australia? And he's like, well, like the girl I met there lives there. And I was like, so are you going to go visit like random person you hooked up with in Bali? And he's like, well, I don't know. Like I'm going to do other stuff. Like he made it sound like he's doing other stuff in Australia. Like he's just going to Australia to like do his own thing. So I kind of passed it off as like nothing. And then I drove all the way to Ontario, got to Ontario, and I just felt completely like confused and deflated. And I felt like I'd wasted my time, wasted my money, and like everything about the trip was like just really traumatizing. Like I wish that I'd left the first day I got there. Like I shouldn't have stayed. And it's like, I know that, but I was so sucked into him. And then he called me out of the blue a month after, and he said, like, I just want to check in with you to see how you're doing. And I said, well, like, yeah, I'm like going through a breakup and it sucks. And I'm doing fine though. Like I just said, like, I'm doing fine though. And he's like, yeah, I was just in Australia, like just kind of nonchalantly. And I said, okay, cool. Like, I don't need to know that stuff. And then he's like, so I just want to let you know that, like, unless it's important, I don't think we should keep in touch. And then it just like, it was just so cold. Like it felt like really cold of him. Mm-hmm. And then, I looked at the profile picture because he messaged me from WhatsApp, and it was like him and this girl that he had met in Bali. And like they were like, I can just tell because even now that's his profile picture. Like it's changing all the time. Like him and this girl, like I know I shouldn't check. Like I've only checked it like twice, but like him and this girl are in his profile picture multiple times. And like, I know that they met in Bali, and I know that they're in a relationship now. Like they've been together for 9 months. And it just feels like I was fed up. Like I always had this weird feeling right after the trip that like, there's nothing about it that felt honest and felt like he respected me. Like everything about it felt like either a setup or that he just really didn't care. Like just a person who has no idea the impact that he has on another person. And
in a way that he was, in that summer, he was propping you up and promising a future again. And then, the thing I've been waiting for has come along, and now I'm just going to drop you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I would have felt better if I knew that I was dropped. Like, I didn't know until after the trip was over that I actually was dropped. Like, that's the thing that, like, I felt was really traumatizing because, like, him and I had broken up so many times that I thought it was just, like, another one. Like, I thought it was another, like, stupid, like, okay, we're broken up, but, like, not really. And it just, like, I think it was traumatizing because he was, like, messaging her and calling her, like, when I was there. Mm-hmm. And also the fact that, like, this other guy was there and knew the whole time, like, that my narc was doing, like, my narc had met someone and, like, never said, I don't know, it just, the whole thing felt like I was, like, set up, or, like, I was, like, in this, like, place of ultimate vulnerability, like, ultimate, like, you're in a foreign country,
Yeah.
And you have nowhere to go. And I felt, that feeling when you're in a foreign country, and I'm a serious traveler. Like I do go to like, I've been to like Costa Rica and like Ecuador and stuff. Like I do travel on my own, but for some reason on that trip, I felt very, very vulnerable to just leave, like to go and do my own thing in that country felt scary. And it just like, I didn't understand why he put me in that position. And it just felt very personal. It felt very vindictive and very like, it didn't feel like he was just doing his own thing and was kind of a coward about the breakup. It didn't feel like that. It felt like he was purposefully like guiding me to this place. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like it's hard to describe, but, and since then, so I'll tell you how I realized that he was like a narc is after a month or so, I felt crazy. Like I was living at my dad's house because I moved to Ontario and I had nowhere to go. So I lived at my dad's house, and I just remember feeling crazy. Like I felt like the same way I did when I was 18. I felt discarded. I felt like he didn't give a shit. I felt like nothing we had was at all like important to him, which like, I know like that's what breakups are and stuff, but it just felt like not like a normal breakup. It felt like that whole trip was really cruel.
Like there was zero respect ever for you.
Ever. Like on the trip and throughout the relationship too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The whole entire relationship. Yeah. When you look back, it feels like there was actually zero respect at all, and even not at the like. You take away the relationship. I'm probably putting words in your mouth, but to even just take away the relationship, even as a friend and as a human being, that there was a lack of respect. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt like I would have been more respected by a stranger.
Yes.
On that, like I would have wished, like if I look back at the Bali trip, I wish I was on that trip with a stranger over him because of the way he was treating me, because of like the way, like I said, he like just conveniently forgot that we had dinner plans on a vacation together and was going to get like an STD check like on our vacation. And and then was like texting this other girl, and like that girl is now his girlfriend. Like how they met. Like I wonder like how he tells this story to other people. Sometimes it's like, what do you say? What do you tell people how you met this person? Like, oh, I met her in Bali. And then people might say like, oh, weren't you in Bali with Dallas? Like, weren't you in Bali with your girlfriend at the time? Like, how do those two things add up? Like you met your new girlfriend on your vacation with your old one. Like, it's so weird. And I know stories like this happen all the time. So I'm trying to like it's kind of like how I console myself, is I know that I'm not like, this is not the craziest thing to happen, but it really ruined my self-esteem. Like it really felt personal because I'd gone through the ringer with him for 4 years. Like it really felt like I'd done everything I possibly could do to prove to him that I was worthy of like his love and his whatever. And like at the end of it all, he just, I showed up to a foreign country and he's like, nope, like I'm done with you. Like that's how it felt. Like it was, I don't know.
So when you're back in Ontario, you're living with your dad. You said you started to notice, did you start researching narcissism, or how did you come to find everything? So
how it happened really, really slowly, well, actually really quick because of COVID, but I was there so I was there in February of this year. So during COVID, so I got there February 18th, and then COVID happened March 13th, I want to say. So the first month I was there thinking that's a regular breakup, thinking it's like, I just missed him, and I just think like a lot of stuff happened with us. But then I start to like wonder why I have such low self-esteem. Like I'd had breakups before where it was like, like you just feel like you worked hard at something and it didn't work out, and you're like, I kind of wish I didn't waste my time. But I felt like my soul was like, like my soul felt crushed. I felt like unbelievably empty. Like I had nothing to offer anyone. Like I had nothing. I had no worth. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't felt that way. I hadn't felt that way since I was 18. I'm like, I'm 34 years old and I'm feeling like I have no worth. And I said to myself, this isn't normal. Like, I'm like, Dallas, you know what a breakup feels like. This is not like a usual, like, oh, it didn't work out and we went our separate ways. Like, this is like so, cause I woke up every morning feeling, just worthless, like completely worthless. And so I just decided to reach out to his ex, which sounded crazy at the time. And I felt like absolutely psychotic, but I actually reached like a rock bottom where I'm like, I don't care. I don't care how I look to her. I don't care how I sound to her. Like, because he had told me about one of his exes that he said that she was crazy. He said that she cheated on him, that she, like dumped him and like was really cruel about the way she dumped him and all this stuff. So I said, I'm just going to reach out to see, like, was he this cold and was he this like, is what I went through something that could be shared with anyone? Because I just felt so alone. And so I reached out to her and she's like, before we even start talking, she's like, you're not crazy. And it made my stomach, because I sent her this long Facebook message that was like, hey, you don't know me, like that whole thing of, hey, you don't know me, but just wondering if you dated XXX and how your experience was with him, because I just feel like really strange after my breakup with him. And she messaged back and she's like, I will call you tonight at 7 p.m. And she said, just before I start, you're not crazy. She's like, he put me through the ringer. He was jealous. We had so many, because I guess what he went through with her is that what he did with her is like the offensive kind of narcissist, like being jealous, being like angry, throwing stuff, like threatening violence with her. Mm-hmm. And he threatened to not only kill himself, but to kill her, like after the relationship. Like he gave her like verbal threats over the phone, and like he stalked her for a year after. He was like the typical malignant narcissist with her. And then I think by the time he got to me a year or two later, he was more like covert with me and more like subtle. Like everything he did was very subtle because he maybe didn't want to expose himself, because he exposed himself to her really quickly. They only dated for a year, she told me, and she said she knew right away, but she felt so sucked in and scared of him. She felt like, she told me, we talked for like 3 hours. It was crazy. And by the end of that conversation, I felt so much less alone. And I'll be honest, before I talked to her, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like I had no identity. I got to the lowest point that I feel like I'll ever get in my life. And it's like, it's scary. Like the lowest, the points you can get to after a relationship like that. I realized that like you can feel so awful, but then having just one person believe you or like see like what's happening is like so it helps me so much. And then of course I started researching like narcissism. I watched one documentary which is amazing. Like there's this I forget who put it out, but it's a documentary about narcissistic abuse, and each person like shares their story. And then I found your podcast, so it really like once I started to see it from the outside and I see it subjectively or objectively, sorry, and I've taken myself out of it, then now I'm learning about me. So what made me like fall into it? Like what was the dynamic between myself and my mom? What was my onset? What was my outlook getting into the relationship that I can learn from that? So I'm trying to be like, I'm educating myself now about what happened, but I'm also still like, I relapse all the time. Like I fall into deep holes where I'm like, no one will love me. Like I'm awful, like I'm worthless, but then I do go back and forth. So I feel like now it's been 6 months and, things like every month, like I feel like things get clearer and clearer. So yeah, so I feel like at the end of the day, sometimes you have to go through stuff like this to like really learn, what your worth is and like what not to tolerate and stuff like that. So
now that you've gone through all of this, you're in the healing stages of things, you'll probably be doing a back and forth for a little bit, but over time, things will get clearer. And you might be. Do you have flashbacks? Like, do you have like CPTSD type flashbacks where, like shame and guilt and things like that? Like over time, that will lessen. And But before we leave, do you have any, I guess, words of wisdom for people that might be going through the same thing?
Yeah, let me just think if I have anything super insightful.
You didn't have anything written down? Come on.
I would say, you know what, like, the biggest thing I've learned from this is that human beings are super complex, and I took it so seriously. Like, when I first learned about when I first realized that he's a narcissist, I took it so seriously, and I said, oh, like, this, it felt like something evil came over me. But I feel like learning all of the stuff that I've learned and watching the documentaries and listening to your podcast, I realize now that it's actually just a human condition. What he is, who he is a human condition. And it's like, all of us are just humans. And like, we all have very messed up, some of us have very messed up childhoods that force us into narcissism. So I think now I'm thinking of it as like narcissists come out of something, awful from their childhood, but it's like, it's a human condition. And so no one can take away, your worth. No one can take away like your power. They're just human themselves. And it's just like a disorder, right? Like, it's just a personality disorder. So I think my word of advice is that it's not about you. It's like trying to look at the person as a human and as like a flawed human being, I think helps a lot with like the recovery. Because none of us are perfect. And I think, at the end of the day, like, we're all doing our best, and, we're not what they told us we are.
Well, Dallas, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for you being here with us today and sharing your story. So thank you for being here. And for everyone else out there who is listening, I hope you have a good night.